Welcome back to Bigger and Louder, everybody. It's Johnny
and Big Tony.
Achuga, achuga, achuga. All right,
that was my sound effect. Good.
I am finally going to take a back seat because the last two episodes I have been. Anthony put me on one. Let's just say that he put me on one. He talked about things that I actually care a lot about, and it got to me, and I ranted and raved. So I'll go ahead and prop Anthony up onto the soapbox today and let him get to the things that he has been trying to talk about and share with you folks.
Well, first, John, thanks a lot for reminding people how much we rambled on last episode. No, I think we kind of covered in our last episode what the main points were. If anything, what I was hoping to get to, which we never have time to, is really kind of about the recent WrestleMania that was airing on Peacock. Did you get a chance to watch that? And the whole with the whole Rock and Roman Reigns. Did you get to see what was going on with that?
I loosely followed the storyline, but I didn't watch. I haven't watched since The Rock left the first time with Stone Cold. But I do know that I got chills and goosebumps running down my spine when I heard the
if you
pause for the bell drop. No. Oh no. The bell from the Undertaker, my friend.
Oh, that guy.
The undead one.
Yeah. Dude, isn't he apparently like the thing that you can he's like undefeated in all the WrestleManias? That was what they were marketing from like right before his retirement several years ago. Isn't that what they were pushing?
The Taker? You're asking the wrong guy. You know, if we want to talk wrestling, you should have told me. I would have asked my cousin Chris to come on. If he didn't go to WrestleMania, he went to Raw last week. I forget which one, but he took my my nephew. He loves it, and he had him hitting him with the chair at home. Dude, the videos are great, man. Like, yeah, wrestling. I do miss wrestling. I should get back into it.
Like,
but you watched?
Well, I watched a little bit of it, right? And I had family in town, and I got a father who he's not really into anything that's in the current events in terms of like pop culture, but like wrestling still kind of holds like a bit of weight to him just because just how the industry is still going fairly strong since like the 70s to the status quo to today, even though it's under new ownership. I remember the years when I used to watch it like religiously, like every Monday night or every like Saturday. They used to have like two showings between WWF, or WWE, which was then WWF, now because they had to switch over for legal issues. And I think you also had WCW, World Championship Wrestling. And there was even the other one that Ric Flair was.
That's where Hogan and all those guys were, right? They were in WCW at the end of the money.
Yeah, there was just like I think a lot of them just went over there. They were really kind of poaching, kind of like the bigger players in WWE. And
well, do you remember when Raw split and SmackDown became a thing? We were there for that. That was SmackDown literally is The Rock's slang, his saying. I was his catchphrase, right?
No, it is. Yeah. The one thing I did appreciate when, again, I had already stopped watching, but somehow they kept pulling me back in on and off. If you remember, they had the show Tough Enough back then. Remember that? There was a live reality show.
The Miz. Wasn't The Miz?
The Miz came through that a little bit. No, he didn't go through that. He was on I think it was on
the Real World. Right.
The Real World. Someone saw him and they're like, wow, he's got a good gimmick. We can like get him on, and maybe it's a scoop. But yeah, it actually blossomed. But I think it was around like Tough Enough 2 is when I watched that full season. It was pretty cool, and then I just like gave up on it again. But I will say the thing that kind of caught my interest to pull me like they say, like was it Michael Corleone says, he's like, just when I'm ready to fucking leave, they pull me back in.
That's what I
It's when they did the draft in Raw and SmackDown, if you remember, where they had two airings, and they were like, well, which superstar is gonna go to which airing and which show? And I remember like Triple H and when he was on Raw with I think Shawn Michaels, but like Brock Lesnar was like the dude I really cared about at the time at the height. Even
I know you were a big Lesnar guy.
I was a big dude, man. I was a huge fan of his. Yeah, I mean, the thing I always ask is like, do you ever watch it anymore, or is it kind of like, nah, fuck it, this shit's just like all staged and scripted and what have you? Like, how do you feel about it currently? Like, do you get like chills when you watch it? Are you excited to watch these guys jump off the ropes and just seeing where it's going? Because because we know somebody who actually works in the industry, who's this person who shall go nameless, has said like, yeah, like they've been really kind of their ratings have not been where they want to be because they're having a hard time bringing in like new sponsorships, new attractions, because the people like us and people before us are still their only preferred audience. Like they're having a hard time getting new audience engaged with this, for the fact that's why they sold it over to the UFC ownership, and they're trying to like do something brand new with it. But like, do you ever watch it anymore? Or if you do, like, do you find it entertaining? Do you find it like, nah, this is good? You know what I mean?
Well, I will. I mean, I think that wrestling, the professional wrestling, WWE, is still, if you follow the storyline like a soap opera that it is, some of the most electrifying television that you can watch.
Right.
Hands fucking down, okay? And let me tell you this, jabroni. Okay, I will say that it shaped, like, I think, not just our personalities in like late middle school or early high school, but it's still shaping kids, and it's not necessarily made for every adult, right? And it's not quote unquote as authentic as, like, football or whatever. But we talked about how we don't think that that's quite as authentic as it could be anymore either. And I really don't give a shit. I think it's like you are getting a chance to now watch in wrestling like surprises, things that shock you. And like I mentioned, I got chills, Anthony. I'm not exaggerating. I said, "Oh, The Rock, let me watch this." Like The Rock is gonna give somebody, the people's elbow or something. No. The lights went out and the bell tolled.
Yeah.
And the Taker chokeslammed his ass right. The canvas. Okay. So like that, it just, the feeling that it made me have makes me want to introduce my son and my daughter to it now.
The whole thing. But something also, like, and here's something that I want to plant the seed to think about if you haven't thought about it already, which is like those dudes you're talking about, like Undertaker, Triple H, who's now ahead of, like, he's like the new
Triple H is
there was a whole like umbrella right at the time of, like, you can call it the Attitude Era, right? They still have some weight to it. And even though the new generation is still like excited when those dudes come on, I guess, but like once they are sort of out of the picture, do you feel like the wrestling is going to have that same je ne sais quoi, if you will, or have that same hype like you're talking about? Because you're following dudes that you kind of grew up with and people followed, but it seems like once they're out of the picture completely, do you feel like people are still, it's going to be sustainable with the characters they have cycling in and out?
Every character I've come across, and I think the WWE is doing a pretty decent job of keeping themselves in like news media. I mean, the McMahon stuff aside, like the positive stuff, like this Cody Rhodes dude, like he's got some, like, I don't know what the kids are saying these days, but like, he's got some like electric to him. Some, he seems to be one of the right guys for the job. I did buy, I want to say it was WWE 2K 17 when like Roman Reigns was on the cover.
Yeah.
And I loved the game. The only problem was none of my cousins or my friends played it. And dude, now this is a great
so you were just you and the computer every night by yourself?
It was me and the computer, or excuse me. Then I would go online and, like, I'm some guy in my early 30s playing, the kids or the guys that watch this shit religiously, and they're just like whooping my ass. So it was like, I like to play right next to somebody, and I know you remember this, and I wonder if this is why you even mentioned it, but like, I know you remember being at our buddy's house with kids that at some point, like, yes, we were friends with them, and like they're like, today I like will look back in this all the bullshit and just honestly laugh. They were like the soccer players, and we were the football guys, and like we were like, all right, you know what, we're gonna put you in WWE, and we literally formed tag teams.
Yep.
And most famously, I'm downstairs finishing up a match, and my tag team partner, Big Tony, goes upstairs to have a snack with our tag team opponents that for the match that was coming up, the belt passing match, the championship tag team was wow, the tag team championship was on the line. Match starts. I'm Stone Cold. I think you were The Rock, right? Or you were The Rock,
No, I was always Lesnar. I was always everyone
Lesnar,
had
right?
everybody had their designated character, and that's who you were representing.
So the match begins. Stone Cold and Lesnar, you start kicking some ass, and it's almost to the point where like I'm looking at these guys. I'm like, yo, they're good at this game. Like, why are we beating them? Like,
it's a landslide. It's a landslide.
It's like, and then in pure and true WWE fashion, shout out to the writers on this one, gentlemen. Anthony goes to get. I'm going up to like the ladder to get the belt, and Anthony, while the two guys are laying out on the floor, and he could be like stomping them, kind of keeping them down, turns to the ladder and starts shaking the ladder and knocks me off.
Oh man.
And all of a sudden I'm like, what the? And I look over, and Anthony has this shit-eating grin on his face with the two other guys on the other team. And he was turning on us.
I turned heel.
He went heel right then and there in high school and speared me. Right. I remember it. I got up, he speared me. And from that point on, it was my sole task to cause a DQ. And I think after like I must have given out 30 stunners to the three of you. I was like tombstoned and pile drive. And finally I reached under the mat and I got a chair and I hit one of them with the chair. And the DQ match happened the DQ happened.
It was a watch.
The title didn't pass. But it was some real shit, dude. That was so much fun.
It was, but you're forgetting the worst part about it, which was like the next day in school, it was just a bunch of bickering and fuck you. This is ridiculous. Like, I want a rematch. It was like we couldn't even like focus on the task at hand in school. And this is in high school, folks. So you got to remember how the pride we were, how lonely we were back then. Just taking.
We didn't have cell phones. We would get together and play video games. Yep. You couldn't just jump online easy back then, right?
Wasn't easy.
Still making the.
Yep, you had to tell people in school where you're going to be, and you had to show up. That's pretty much what. Or if you remember the days, you knew where people were. If you were still riding a bicycle, like you passed their house, like the bikes are outside. Oh, they're all hanging out at Anthony's house or all at John's house, etc. No, but that was real. It's just like how funny is just like how we take a simple game and we make it into a whole semester of just like scripted storytelling in a video game, right? It's ridiculous.
It was like it really was something I'll never forget. Like, how many video games have we played? Like,
and you know what?
Times we played. I don't remember any of them, but I remember that.
You know why? And this is going to sound so stupid. And this is probably one of the most for us is entertaining. For the listeners, they're probably like, oh, what the fuck are these guys talking about? But like the one thing that people forget is that, right, back then there was no internet, or the internet didn't have the capabilities it did in terms of the online play style, chatting, whatever you guys want to call it today. It just didn't exist. So the fact that we had there was a thing back then for the PlayStation was called a multi-tap, and I was the only guy who actually had it. And this little gizmo permitted 6 players at a time to play any video game that had a roster to warrant like 6 or 1 to 6 players. Yeah. So when that existed, like this was like groundbreaking. Oh my God, we're there. We no longer have to wait for somebody else's turn time and time again. So I think this is why it was such a big thing, because you have more hands on the pot giving their 2 cents in, and just like, everyone kind of like, bickering with each other and, just just having a good time, right? Like
I loved it, man. I would, and I still want that fucking rematch. Like,
listen, the game's on. I think you can get it online for like.
We don't need it. I have it. You think I got rid of it?
Well, do you have a PlayStation 2?
Sitting. Well, the PlayStation. Well, it was right behind us when we were filming that.
Oh shit! We should have fucking played it then. Fuck.
I have Blitz.
I don't know why we didn't play it. Shame on you.
We were making content for the people. We were making content for the people, which we still haven't released some of that stuff.
No, we haven't, and rightfully so. So
Yeah, you don't want to see how Anthony dressed. He
yeah,
was
and it
wearing
was
his gray sweatpants. Not
I was wearing my gray sweatpants. That's a true. But you know something, you mentioned his name, and it's just I gotta talk about it because it's in this current events like the Vince McMahon sex trafficking. So like he stepped down his chair, like he took his money and essentially ran. His son-in-law is like acting as like one of the senior VPs of the company, even though it's under new ownership with the UFC. But like, have you looked into the whole sex? What like, first of all, like how and why, but also what would motivate someone like him who has all this money, all this power, no worries. Like he's got his billions of dollars just sitting in his fucking
Yeah.
lab.
Okay.
Like what
Do you
would
really want to
motivate
hear what I'm
someone?
going to say? Because this
I
is
want.
going to take me a minute, like to give you.
I do. You know, I'm gonna give you the floor, but I really want to hear your thoughts on like what
Oh,
motivates someone who has everything to gamble
okay.
that shit like that and throw it all away one way or the other. Like why?
Well, I'm glad you phrased the end of the question like that because I'll tell you why. Because that's the only like everything losing everything is probably the only thing that still excites these guys.
Mm,
And what I mean by that is like, you know, years ago, people were like, "Oh, what does Putin have over Trump? Some kind of sex tape, a pee tape? Like, oh, it's probably him getting peed on." I'm like, peed on? Someone's getting peed on? Like, like at that point, it's probably like, yo, I'm a billionaire. The only thing that like gets me off is somebody, peeing on me. And like, I can understand that. Okay. That doesn't offend me. What I give a fuck about
what
is
the
these
fuck are
people
you
who like,
talking?
they're at this point with Diddy, with all these people with that Nickelodeon, that fat fucking asshole, like, I guess it doesn't surprise me at any point anymore, which is like something that I'm desensitized and I don't want that to happen, especially now with like, our children. And like the only thing I can think of is like the only real way to deter this is we got to chop their heads off in a public square. Like if they're found guilty of all this stuff of like sexually abusing children, of sex trafficking, this type of bullshit, Anthony, like enough is enough. Like I'm not for the death penalty for non-violent crimes, but I
Mm.
guess like I am not like liberal to the point where like I think people are past capital punishment. And I'm sorry, but like our society and the way that things are happening right now doesn't show us that we're past it. It kind of shows us that it's like, well, we're not going to get our heads chopped off in the public square.
What you're talking about is like the risk is not there. Well, like they have nothing to really worry about if they get caught one way or the other. So therefore, they're gonna take a chance on it because they're realizing, well, I'm not gonna die, so or I'm
Let
not gonna
me
have.
and let me be super clear. I do not think of all those conspiracy theories that do sound outlandish that you know it is. I do not think it is a conspiracy theory that Jeffrey Epstein was murdered. Right? It's very clear to me that the only risk to those people, like again, like that
The
0.1%,
elite,
these like
the elite.
these elite billionaire people,
Mm.
that the only risk to them is going to prison in the fear of getting shanked, like if you're gonna rat on the family.
Well, listen, if they go to jail, just to put a pin in that quickly, is like they got enough money to buy the Supreme Court, right? It's like what did Tony Montana say? He's like, here, I'll give you $100,000 more. With that, you can buy the Supreme Court off. And he's like, if they got money, you can basically grease the pot for some of these people. Oh, they're gonna throw 20 years out, and you get 6 months in a fucking in a non violent, in an upscale resort type of prison where you're just with the rest of the white collar individuals.
What motivates them is that nothing else excites them. The risk of losing it all is like, and saying,
Right.
I don't
Yeah.
necessarily, I don't know the details about Vince McMahon. I think that there was like some poop involved potentially,
Oh
right?
man, he was
Like,
getting shat on. Oh my goodness.
right?
Just
I don't know, or doing the shitting. I think was the problem, right? So, like, yeah, like he was the shitter, not the shitting.
so you know who
But I think
actually just to your point, like just because you mentioned about the McMahon, and actually the person that we know who works there has confirmed this. It was the one with the
oh,
rich family.
Giamatti.
No, yeah, Paul. No, the other one.
Session.
Secession. Yeah, the one with them. Culkin's
Oh,
in it.
yeah.
Macaulay Culkin's brother. Right.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
But
Cullen
this. Right.
McCulkin.
Yeah. So
Kieran McCulkin.
she said, and I quote, that family is the McMahon family. Every single interaction, the awkwardness, the sort of, you know, the eccentricities, if you will, everything, all the shit. She's like, that is the McMahon family, 100%. So to your
Wow.
point, like that just kind of defies, who he is as the
Well,
head of
it's
the
funny that you
house.
say that because to me, that just means like that kind of affirms what we're saying. And it's like it's a carbon copy. Like these people are all the same. Like there's nothing eccentric about them. There's nothing unique about them. Like once
No.
you're a billionaire or whatever, like you know, the only thing, what do they say? Absolute power corrupts absolutely. Okay.
Yeah.
When you have billions of dollars, these things like seem they don't seem risky to you. There's is no real gamble there because, like you said, they'll get the best lawyer. They'll find some bullshit, way to get out of it. They'll plead it down so they either have probation or no jail time.
But like, even if let's say that is the case, right? Then doesn't excite these guys anymore. But like they're essentially living or have earned a life that everyone has earned wants, right? It's like you work your life, you work your ass off, so you don't have to work anymore, right? You have all this money, you have no worries in the world. So I guess why work then, right? I don't care if you are a working stiff or someone who is easy to make $1 million a year. I don't get what was the point of doing all of it just to throw it all away, right? It's
Well, let
like,
me ask you a question then. Let me
yeah, go
ask you a
ahead.
question. Like, what do you think a billionaire's job is? Like, when you say work, like, why do they
They,
work?
they work because
Like,
they,
what is
again,
work?
work is literally seeing you again. What are we talking work to, like the average working
A
stiff, or to a
billionaire, like like
billionaire?
take the show Succession for example,
Right,
right? Like the Roy
right,
family. Like,
right.
what did they do for work? Like, what
So,
were they sitting in front of a computer in a cubicle? Like, what
yeah,
do they do? Like, explain to me what
I
you think
yeah.
billionaires do.
So I to Succession, I forgot what that family did. It's been a while since I saw the show, but a billionaire, his job is to make more money on a regular basis than they probably should. Because I mean, that's the benefit of living. That's it's a stupid weirdo answer, but that's the truth. Like if I make $1 million, if I'm guaranteed $1 million a year, I want to make sure that I'm staying ahead of that curve, not just aiming for my $1 million salary. I want to make in my pocket. I want to net $700 million. That's the job, and they don't take any prisoners. They're sharks, right? They will find ways to manipulate the system to benefit their business, to make sure all the wheels are squeaky, everyone keeps their mouth shut. They use their power to threaten and shame people and to make sure like we are right, everybody else is wrong. Like that's the truth. And something you said something earlier about power, right? This is really fun. It's gonna be a little cliche, but you gotta stay with me on this, okay? I agree. Like money is power, and that's literally when you earn money, you want the power to basically control, manipulate the world around you. I have money, you do what I say. I'm paying you for a service or for products and goods or whatever it is. You do what I say. I'm paying for this, and therefore you do what I say in a story.
Right.
And we've seen like how like enough money will and can corrupt people one way or another. And it kind of ties back into the whole. This is where it's a little cliche, so stay with me on this. It gets weird because this is where like people talk about Superman being like this all powerful being, but he's completely good. And Lex Luthor even kind of said in a very weird way, like anyone with that much power cannot be good at all. And they kind of like compare him to God. Like if God is all good, he cannot be all powerful. If he is all powerful, you cannot be all good. And somehow Superman defied this law, being like he's like essentially a god, having all this might, ability, the ability to fly, lift up, buildings over his head, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it's like, but this guy still fights for the good of the people. Like he's not easily corrupted, persuaded, or manipulated. He always does the right thing. So back to
Yes, it
the
takes
reason.
an act of fiction, pure fiction, to.
Literally, that's what it is. It's not just a comic book fiction to show like good people who have money can, do good things. It makes me worry that, and I say this, it's like maybe it's a good thing. Like these people, like whether you have money or don't, like maybe the average person doesn't know the world that you live in nowadays because this shit gets out in microseconds for like what you're doing, especially when you're a big name in the industry, whether it's like you're in entertainment or whatever. If you have money and people know who you are, they're gonna make sure they tear you down. To avoid all this bullshit, like people claim like, oh, I don't want to be in the media, I don't want more. It's like if you don't want problems, like stay away from the fire. Don't dance or play with fire. And when
That's true. And speaking of the rich getting away with things, OJ Simpson passed away today.
get out of here, really?
Yeah, I heard that on the way home.
If you want to get you want to plant your seed somewhere, I get it. Like, go to a place where it's legalized, or it's more like go out outskirts of Vegas. I believe prostitution is legal out there. Go to Canada, where literally you can go into a phone book and have a call girl come to your room, just like ordering a pizza. Like, it's that simple, right? I guess, like, why would you? I mean, I've been to Canada, and it actually freaked me out when I was going through the phone book. Like, oh, 1-800, all these 1-800 numbers for all these call girls. It's like, that freaked me out, knowing how quick and easy it is. But like, in America, this is going to come back to bite you in the ass. And if you want to stay away from all the media, all the sort of like investigation, just adding more shit to your day, don't fuck up, man. But like, hey, listen, it's an expression, you can lead a horse to water, you can't make a drink, right? So, since we're on the topic of celebrities, do you think like, influencers and, social media are celebrities get the same sort of breaks? And do you kind of find them, kind of untouchable, just like the elite of all the other?
Look at you with a deep question. What a great question. What a great question, Anthony.
Yeah.
No, I don't think so. I don't put them on that same level. I think there has been like I follow a ton of couples. Like, I think it's Alex and John. Like, they're like this couple that do like really, really funny videos. Congratulations to them. They just had a baby announcement. But
is that the one where they shoot? Is that the one where they shoot the? I see a couple online, and is that the one?
He's got a mustache. Like, he's in shape. He's got a mustache. She's like, looks like she's on the taller side. Slender. Like, but both have brown hair. But they're fucking hilarious. But no, I don't think they have that type of relationship. They actually have a podcast as well, when they answer like relationship questions from people. They have like millions and millions of followers. So, they're on a different level than our tens.
It's like its own world. So you're saying it's kind of like its own little world I think
it's its own little world that is like very segmented. But like, for example, like Mr. Beast, like that guy. I mean, I don't know him. I just follow him. But like, that dude seems awesome, genuine. Like,
who's Mr. Beast? I never heard of him before.
You've never heard? Okay, well, Anthony is not. I don't. Yeah.
Keep something, folks? No, I'll tell you this. That's actually a good thing. I don't know who these people are, because that only shows you like I'm not attracted to my phone all day to know what's going on in the world, to the point where like I need to see people doing the same thing. So,
but you don't watch. You don't only read the news. You don't watch sports. You don't listen to the news. Like, all you do is live in your house and like breathe in your house, or like your little Connecticut little bubble of whatever little gazebo in the middle of town square.
Listen, you know what Daniel what Daniel Radcliffe said, that kind of, it's the truth. He said it in Now You See Me, the sequel.
It's cold under the closets.
Pretty close. He got in trouble for espionage, and basically he went off the grid, and he's like, no one's ever gonna be able to find me. And the girl says to him in the movie, she says to him, well, listen, like, how you're going to be free? You have no access to the internet. You have nothing online to live. He's like, no, it's actually the other way around. By me being off the grid and removing myself from all the technology, I'm free as a result, because you guys are dependent upon the internet, computers, and cell phones, and you live your lives by it and what's going on. I don't need that shit. I live my life just as fine, just as we were living our lives very happily back in the 80s and 90s and before then, John. Right? Like,
so what you're saying is you're making a conscious decision to not have TVs or video games or iPads or cell phones in your home, Anthony?
No, I have to have them, because the world says in order for me to operate, you have to have
function
them.
As an adult
to function in a working relationship. You don't need to have
Instagram on your phone, bro. You don't need to have Instagram. You don't need to have, Facebook, you didn't. You don't need to have all those things to just like be tuned in to what's going on around you, right? Like, for example, like, dude, at some point you say like, hey, I love football. And it's like, hey, you didn't even know that like college players are getting paid, and that, they're changing the NFL kickoff rule. Right. So it's like little things like that, where it's like, dude, just pay attention. You don't have to be obsessed.
That's what I'm saying, though. Like, I will pay attention if I happen to pass it and casually pass it in one way or the other. If I happen to be, the TV happens to be on, I hear it. But it's not that simple. Everyone is consumed by these little apps and
Not
everything.
everybody.
Oh,
Yes, people
please.
are at alarmingly high rates
Yeah. And it's
consumed
getting
by it, but
worse.
it's like not everybody's consumed by it.
I don't believe it. I think everyone's consumed. We have 5-year-olds and 6-year-olds who have their own cell phones and know how to scroll and look at things on these little tools. They know how to do it, and it's going to get
How
worse for
many
them.
5 or 6 year olds do you know personally that have a cell phone?
Several.
How many? Like, I don't know any.
I know about 10 people, 10 adults who have children, who
Of
have
what
children between the
ages
ages
that have cell
3 to
phones?
6. They have cell phones and iPads.
That's crazy to me.
It is. I'm telling you
And
right
have
now.
you ever asked them why did you give them this?
No, it's not my business, but because there's an unwritten rule in the world of parenting, and that is you never ask or correct someone else's parenting or children, regardless of how much it fucking sucks to see things that you don't agree with. Again, if you remember, this is really going way back. Remember Hooked on Phonics? Remember that shit back in the 90s? That was like the start of like
That's
online
unbelievable.
learning, right? And like that's where but guess what? Like kids today, between ages of 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, etc., they see things in their household, in the community, at school, and they pick it up really quick about, ooh, did you actually see this thing? Do you see that? And they're just on it doing things other than things that are going to benefit their vocabulary, speech, learning, because the internet
Correct. And that's where
is
parents have to come in, Anthony.
they do. But guess what? Are you gonna do you know what your next door neighbor's doing right now? Do you have a secure? No, you don't, because you can have a conversation for
No, but
5
I'm
minutes.
saying that's where parents come in. Like Julia, so we got my daughter an iPad for her 7th birthday
Mhm.
because she is doing great in school. She's an like upstanding citizen, and it's like, hey, all right, like you know what it means, and we're going to teach you what it means to be responsible for something like this. Jody put restrictions on the account where she could see literally everything that happens on the iPad.
Mhm.
We don't let her download any crazy apps. She's got
Mhm.
like, she does have YouTube, but
Right.
I only had to tell her I didn't want her to watch it, and she really doesn't. Like Julian, he's younger, he does still a little bit when he gets his hands on it, but they play like Roblox with their friends, which is like a fun little game or whatever.
Mhm.
Because when you earn your screen time, you can go ahead and do that and be part of your crew. Same thing like when we go out to dinner, as I mentioned, like we'll give them our device at dinner, but ABC Mouse, like I mentioned, there's like Leapfrog was another one. We have a Prodigy, which is a great learning app that they actually
Yeah.
prescribe from the school. There's like your kids aren't in school yet, dude. So like, I hate to break it to you, pal. When they
Well,
get there,
yep.
they're gonna have devices, and especially if you put them in a nice little like bougie little preschool, cute little preschool, they're gonna be having a television screen, probably
Mhm.
40 to 60 inches big, and
Probably.
they will have iPads and devices that they will learn how to use and manipulate.
You're right. But again, the point you pointed out, which is like, oh, it should be used for academia, learning, growing, creative thinking, so on and so forth. But even if you do restrict the iPads, the screen, what they can see, when, how, and why, etc.,
Mhm.
it doesn't mean that once they actually leave your home, that they're not with their friends who actually have finding back doors to getting this information. It's like, how many times you were told not to swear in front of your parents or in school? But yet, when you went down the block hanging with your friends, you were dropping F bombs and saying this and that. You knew how to turn it off when you were on the adults. The same thing applies here. It's like, oh, like mom and dad, like you're like, I can remember like kids who were trying to watch like the porno channel, and like the kids are like, oh, mom, dad, what is this? And then guess what? You find they tell you it's nothing, don't worry
Scramble,
about
the
it.
scramble
The
screen.
scramble, what is that? Like, okay, and you're trying to understand what this is. But now all of a sudden, some kid down the block, he's got a fucking Playboy, and you're looking at the shit behind, and you come back home and just play stupid. Kids are resilient. They will find a
Okay,
way.
not every kid is a slimy little shit,
I don't believe that.
and
Well, finding those
the
shit's a hard
iPad,
word.
like and again,
It's
but like this is
curiosity.
where like it breaks down, right? Parents and I mean I talk about this openly, so this isn't going to be the first time for some people hearing this, but like people like to blame like, oh, that generation, this generation, like they're so dependent on their
Yeah.
devices. Hey, guess what, assholes? You raised us. Like you raised the generation and birthed the generations that are on devices, and like I personally didn't get a cell phone until I was 16, like just because they were still rolling out to the masses, so it was like, I want to say 2002 probably, right, for us. Like I was like 2002, I finally got a cell phone, and it was like the indestructible Nokia with the blinding blue lights and the best snake version ever. So now the question here is, when did parents stop being engaged with the kids in the same way, or like letting them, right? Letting these behaviors become pervasive. Like, I don't care how much my son cries when I tell him to put the switch away and it's not time to play games. Like, he's learned that it's not time to play games. Like, he cried a couple of times and he's like, all right, well, until it's time, it's not, I can't touch it.
It's
little things like that.
Because it's what's being put out there for these kids to absorb, regardless of how many times or how often you're limiting screen time. Like, you can tell your son, you get 10 minutes and that's it, right? But on that 10 minutes, he's gone through so much data, the graphics on games, on YouTube, on this and that. It's like an endless petri dish of information where it's like, okay, next 10 more minutes.
I do not think you have any idea how apps work, bro. Like, that's not like, do you think these 3-year-olds, I mean, look, in Tyler, Connecticut, bro, if these kids are having Instagrams and having social media between like, before high school, quite frankly, like some kids are getting away with it in middle school, but like, if they are going to have social media and they want to kick it off in high school or whatever, right, like, so be it. But if, dude, come on, man, you really think these kids are just like scrolling reels? Like, that's not what my kids do.
I've seen it. Maybe not your kids, but you're speaking for yourself. You're not speaking for the millions.
But like, what other kids are you telling?
And the millions like,
I don't
other
see
people
over the fence. Oh, you see what over the fence? Do you see over the fence? But you're sitting here saying, "Oh, no, it's every kid. It's every kid."
Why don't you?
I don't know any kids like this.
Well, I do. Why don't you, when you walk into the community, when you go food shopping or other places, right? Rather than just like going to your day and getting your tasks done today, just keep an open mind. Look around you. What's actually happening? I'm not talking about between the ages of 1 to 3. I'm talking ages 5 to 10. That's when these kids start to get really creative, where the learning is starting to be affected because parents.
I disagree. I think the earlier they're having it is the problem. Like, if you're, and look, man, like, again,
and it is I agree. No. It is
putting it in her hand. If it's a soothing device, I mean, look, man, it's a little Pavlovian here, like, the with the dog and the bell. If you are crying or if you're being fussy and it's like, here, watch a video, here, listen to, like, watch this. That's a soothing device, a soothing mechanism. So in the future, when they are 5 to 10 and they're like getting yelled at or they didn't do their homework or practice test, they're going to go self-soothe on their phones and do scrolling and social media. Or like when, that's going to be their coping mechanism. So the earlier that you give them that device in that way, right? It's like, dude, and for a while we were even allowing it in the car, and I stopped that in the car when like maybe 3 years ago, right? Good. Like, so because I noticed, I'm like, or maybe actually probably longer than that now, because Julian wasn't around. Like, it was probably 5 years ago when Juliana was like 2 years old, that I was like, you know what? No, we're not going to just like give her and it was both the Jody and I were like, we can't do this anymore. We can't do it. But right now, you give them an iPad, they know how to use it, they know how to be safe on it. They have fun sending like us filtered pictures or whatever, like with their face with the little things on it. We do, like, we're remote, bro. So like, we're out in Cali. We got them an iPad so they could call my parents and we could talk to them via like Google Chat or whatever, right? So FaceTime.
You're right. You're not wrong. You're right in every. What I'm saying is like at this early stage, because the pattern can be broken like this, right? What I'm saying is we live in a generation now where tablets, cell phones are babysitters between the time that these kids, because when parents have just had enough of their day, here, take this, leave me the fuck alone. And these kids are clever to find out more things as they start to learn, like what certain words mean, or a combination of things on Google and how you can get more information, this and that, whatever. Let me ask you this question. When you were coming up of age, you didn't have any of this shit, and there was things that you coped with, right? We didn't need it back then, but now it's like, this is our go-to. And something, like, I've done it myself where I've given, handed out things on and off because every other attempt has failed. But what I'm saying is like as these kids get older, between past the age of 5 to 10 into 12, like who are you talking to? You need a fucking cell phone. And the answer is nobody. You don't know anybody. You have it because these gadgets, this thing here is not a cell phone. It's a fucking computer. You've given people a fucking handheld computer to go on and it's a gigantic fucking petri dish to find anything you want, and it's affecting attention span,
petri dish.
Literally attention span, learning patterns, because everyone is quick to just go on their phone now. Think about it. Now, when people want to research things, they don't go to the library using a Dewey Decimal System. It's like, hey, ChatGPT, write me a fucking 10-page essay on the fucking Declaration of Independence. Okay, here you go, done. And then they hand shit in like this. The workmanship has been broken. The sort of level of like creativity and also like the ability to think on your own feet and the work habit has been removed because all we want to do is click a fucking button and have it done for us. And therefore, it's affecting our ability to think outside the box and sort of hustle, if you will. Right? How many times you read a fucking 10-page paper? You didn't have the fucking internet. You had to go read a fucking book. You had to cite it. You had to use the pages. Everything was working.
I mean, I can't argue, Anthony, that I think the internet has spiraled out of control.
It has crippled us. Adults as well. We are using. But
I think it's not. I mean, I hate to say this again, man. Like I think it's not uniquely American, but it's largely an American problem. Like our TikTok app, which thank God I have been strong enough to not download. Although I do crank through reels on Instagram.
It's useless. It's useless.
Right. It's like the TikTok in the States, which is just, useless, like dancing and fails and blah, 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 right. It's like over and over again, where in China, it's education. Like they only allow it's only like DIY and self-development and things like that enrich their population. So, I don't want to bring it back to the who's controlling who and where, follow the money. But it's like, seriously, it's we don't have those type of restrictions and that type of we don't have those boundaries in place because our legal system, our government, the owners of these corporations, right? They're not going to do that. They want us to be dumb. They want us to be dumb.
I mean, you can say it's dumb. I think you know what I think it is. I think it's more of just like, hey man, we're tired of people bitching and arguing. Just here, you want this? Here you go. Like we're not going to restrict you because everyone cries that, oh, I can't have this. I don't want whatever it is. But in places like you mentioned, like China, Japan, where they are dead set on being like, no, you are not getting this, and we know why. And it's for the benefit of your own good, etc. Right? Like we have an open system where we're not going to do shit until you fuck up, but by then it's too late, and that can mean so many different things. But yeah, I will stand back. Again, this is for all the parents out there who happens to listen to this. Like those screens should not be a babysitter. Get them off those fucking screens. Don't give your kids fucking cell phones by the time they hit first grade or anywhere in elementary school, middle school, fucking high school. Let them start interacting with people and working on like social dynamics, social interaction. Stop being people who hide behind gadgets and the internet and get out there and actually start fucking like using your voice and developing social skills you are going to fucking lose with the rate we're going. We're pretty much there where people don't want to fucking talk to anybody anymore. It's like, I need to send you a text or an email, et cetera, because like there's a phobia or an anxiety of like going up to somebody and saying, hey, how you doing? Right. And it all starts at this age, man.
I will agree. And I think like a good story for me to end it on here is like, there's a stark difference in my son's 5-year-old soccer league. It's 5-on-5, no goalie, right? Like, it's just basically, 5 yards in a cloud of dust, right? Like, they run around and it's, all kicking the ball. My son's team is actually like, I would say it's actually predominantly now. I was going to say it was completely Latino, but like now it's predominantly Latino. So my son being half white and half Latino, is on this team. He understands Spanish. These kids, like, there's like a different work ethic and a different understanding of the game because they live it like at home as well. Like, it's like how we watch football or baseball. Like, they've known soccer as long as we've known football and things like that. So these young kids are really good and they're disciplined and they have like resilience. They fall down, they get back up. The other teams, Anthony, in this league are like not predominantly all white, just like all white kids. It's like the Valley. It's like mostly white kids. Howard, I don't know, right? But these kids have no social skills. They have no resilience.
I believe it.
They fall down and they start like they fall down, they trip, they start crying over nothing. Their mommies have to hold their hands on the field. They let them wear their little, sunglasses and it's cute. It's like, yo, like tell your kid to take the glasses off and hit the field, right? And they don't shake hands after the game or like teach them that. They like run off and do whatever. And it's like, yeah, you know what? I'm sorry, like my team's beating your son's team 10-0, but it's because you're not producing strong-minded kids.
No, you're not.
It's like they're on their devices or holding their daddy and mommy's hands or being coddled up until the whistle blows. And then every time there's a break, they run back over to mommy and daddy. Like, and the coach, I even saw like the last week, the coach actually tried and was like, hey guys, like get over here. And he told one kid, he's like, stop falling down. And I had just such respect for this poor coach, but it's like, I see a difference, man. Like it's a big cultural thing as well. So I don't know. That's a big problem, but I agree with you. Keep the devices out of your hands, keep the devices out of your kids' hands until, they really understand the power of them. When with great power comes great responsibility.
I agree 100%, man. Again, I will say on this note as well, like it's okay for soothing. Like if you want to watch educational stuff or there's some, noise that they like, or maybe a video that's, music oriented and they're incorporating music and learning and patterns and behavior, that's cool. But once they start hitting the grade school and beyond that, I'd say get that shit out of their fucking hands. You want to give your kids a device to look at it now and then because I'm going to meltdown and you don't literally have enough time to take them for a drive around the block. Great. But something, like don't let it be a dependent for them. And by giving it to them to watch all day, all night, and then just letting their brains rot inside and out. But that's my advice to you parents out there. It should be used as needed, not as that something to take up all their time.
Amen, bro.
All right, folks, listen, this is always a great episode. We'll probably have more talk on this topic in our next episode. We have some other things to get off our chests. Something we want to kind of get on the record is the Tyson fight coming up. But again, we love you all. Hopefully that this is all entertaining for you guys. And as always, I'm Big Tony, my main man, Johnny D, with Bigger and Louder Podcast.
All right. Take care, everybody.